It's Wednesday, May 3. In the headlines, the government working to counter cash management security attacks. Jamaicans urged to plant a tree on Labor Day. In business news, Jamaica to explore nuclear energy use. Regionally, regional leaders criticized. On the international scene, Al Jazeera marks World Press Freedom Day. In sports, CWI publishes West Indies men's 2023 international matches. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. Moves are being made to counter the recent spate of attacks on cash management security firms. That's the word from National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang.
Activity immediacy are strengthened on operational standards to include specialized training and certification of the security guards involved in cash transit management, use of hard-skin vehicles for cash delivery, cash transfer vehicles equipped with cameras to increase awareness, use of panic buttons on board cash transfer vehicles, which are present and some of those currently being used, a much more robust communication regime between the private security companies and the Jamaica Constabulary Force for real-time support and response, and the appointment of a special multidisciplinary investigation team led by a superintendent of police to focus on these groups that have been targeting ATMs and cash transit vehicles.
Dr. Chang says the government will amend the Private Security Regulation Authority Act
to allow for specialized training of security guards given the increased threat environment. In addition, we'll be engaging the banking sector for establishing minimum standards for the placement and hardening of ABM machines. We will continue to engage all stakeholders to ensure that minimum operating standards are established and adhered to at all venues where where money transit operates. We'll do what it takes to protect the lives of the security guards and the assets of our hard-working Jamaicans who are affected by this current spate of attack on the cash transit operations.
He says the country's threat environment has changed as criminals are organized and callous. However, the government continues to invest in the Jamaica Constabulary Force to improve its capacity. Minister Chang was speaking at this week's post-cabinet press brief. The inaugural Transformations JCF People, Quality and Technology Expo is set to be held on May 11 to 14 at the National Arena in Kingston. And the Jamaica Constabulary Force will be showcasing its latest technologies and quality management systems. The expo will also highlight the technology-enabled quality management reforms and transformation, which have been happening systematically over the past 5 to 6 years in the JCF. Deputy Commissioner of Police Dr. Kevin Blake says the JCF wants people to feel confident that the force is equipped to ensure their safety and security, and at the same time signal to criminals that the JCF has the resources to go after them. May 1 is observed by many countries as Labor Day, but Jamaica annually celebrates this holiday on May 23. The date was chosen to commemorate the labor rebellion that arose in 1938. Speaking at the launch of this year's installation, Prime Minister Andrew Holness said the focus is on climate change, food security, and road safety.
These areas of focus were chosen as we highlight the importance of citizen mobilization in responsible use of our roads and responsible stewardship of our environment.
He says the focus on climate change will mobilize the nation in one action.
We can all plant a tree. The 3 Million Trees initiative, which began in 2019, was impacted negatively by the COVID-19 pandemic. However, to date, I'm pleased to report that we have planted 2.5 million trees. And we intend to use Labor Day to plant the other 500,000.
The event is being led by the government through the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation in partnership with the Ministry of Local Government.
This is part of a larger program to beautify our major traffic corridors and to add a certain aesthetic and calming appeal to our infrastructure as we build them out. And as you can see, we are on a very robust program of building out infrastructure.
Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries, Pernell Charles Jr., says RADA will be issuing seedlings. He's encouraging Jamaicans to plant with a purpose.
Planting with a purpose requires you to understand that we are all in one ecosystem, and the trees are critical to our existence. It's not just an activity. It is for our survival on this planet. And so we encourage all who are registering and all who are listening to appreciate our trees as an important part of our existence on this planet.
Starting today, Newport Ferguson Jamaica Limited will cut the price of all granular fertilizers by 22%. Minister of Agriculture Pernell Charles Jr. made the announcement during his contribution to the sectoral debate in Parliament on Tuesday. He says the Rural Agriculture Development Authority, RADA, will undertake a $30 million pilot project for composting and organic fertilizer production on farms across the island. He also announced that more technical support will be provided to farmers in the area of land preparation. The government is thinking of integrating nuclear energy in the country's energy mix. Danita Rodney has that story and more in the business report.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness has signaled the intentions of the government to integrate nuclear energy in the country's energy mix. The move will form part of Jamaica's national energy policy, which aims to generate 50% of electric energy from renewable sources by 2030. Prime Minister Holness made the revelation while speaking at the opening ceremony of Expo Jamaica 2023 last week.
As an important element in our energy mix, and we are starting now the process. I have met with the International Atomic Agency. Jamaica has to explore new technology in nuclear energy, small nuclear plants to generate energy in Jamaica, which will be cheaper, more stable, and more affordable. So the Jamaican government is serious about insulating our economy from energy shocks and high energy prices.
For your market updates, in foreign exchange trading for Tuesday, May 2, the US dollar sold for an average of $154.01. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $114.48. The pound sterling traded for $192.19. And the euro sold for an average of $171.17. In JSE trading, the JSE index declined by 5,785 points. The junior market index declined by 31 points. The combined market index declined by 5,686 points. And the All Jamaican Composite Index declined by 6,576 points. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 110 stocks, of which 33 advanced, 59 declined, and 18 traded firm. Stocks advanced for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited Verbal Preference, and Berger Paints Jamaica Limited. Stocks declined for Access Financial Services Limited, Barita Investment Limited, and Blue Power Group Limited. Trading firm were AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited, CAC 2000 Limited, and Cargo Handlers Limited. The overall volume leaders were Carreras Limited with over 12 million units, Wigton Wind Farm Limited ordinary shares, and Grace Kennedy Limited with over 3 million units. In regional stocks, in Trinidad and Tobago, Zero Securities traded. Zero securities traded on the Barbados Stock Exchange. In regional business, Planning and Development Minister Penelope Beckles says firms in Trinidad and Tobago will soon be called on to curb their greenhouse gas emissions. More in this story.
According to the International Monetary Fund, the economic cost of disasters which occurred in the Caribbean between 1950 and 2016 exceeded $22 billion. Planning and Development Minister Penelope Beckles shared the statistic as she addressed an audience at the American Chamber's Conference on Environmental, Social and Governance on Tuesday.
A functional measurement, reporting and verification system for greenhouse gas emissions being managed by the Environmental Management Authority. I hope to take a note to Cabinet soon to formalize this system into a legislative framework to make greenhouse gas reporting and mitigation actions mandatory.
Minister Beckles said, this country is committed to reducing our national carbon emissions within the next 7 years.
From the three main emitting sectors, namely power generation, industry, and transportation, by 15% by 2030 from business as usual. In absolute terms, this is the equivalent of 103 million tons of carbon dioxide. The estimate cost of meeting this objective is $2 billion.
The Planning and Development Minister said the cost of reducing the country's carbon footprint is expected to be met by a mix of government and international funding, including the Green Climate Fund. Terry Ann Brown-Campbell, TTT News.
In international business, the U.S. Federal Reserve is likely to push its benchmark overnight interest rate to its highest level in nearly 16 years.
After 3 major U.S. bank failures in 2 months and growing concerns about an economic downturn, the Federal Reserve appeared set to raise interest rates yet again when its policy meeting wraps up on Wednesday, but it could be the last rate hike for some time. The central bank is expected to deliver another 25 basis point rate increase at the conclusion of its 2-day policy meeting, which would push the benchmark overnight interest rate to its highest level in nearly 16 years.
Inflation is still high.
Reuters Fed correspondent Ann Safir says that despite the recent turmoil in the banking sector, the Fed believes it must stay the course to curb inflation, and that means even higher rates to slow economic growth.
They don't think that they've seen the full effect of what they've done so far with rates actually filter through the economy. We're beginning to see it in the housing market, for instance. We're seeing credit tightening, which is related to interest rates. We're starting to see some of that, but still, very strong labor market. The economy is still growing. People are still spending quite a bit. The Fed isn't raising interest rates to make banks fail. That's sort of a bug in a way, not a feature. The feature is having banks pull back on lending, and they do want to see that.
Indeed, the Fed's aggressive rate hikes, 9 so far this year, created unexpected challenges for regional banks, and now credit is tightening up across the banking sector. That could be enough for the Fed to start pulling back on raising rates.
We think this will be probably their last hike.
Brad Bernstein, managing director of wealth management at UBS, says the Fed's tightening cycle is likely over after Wednesday. The market's focus now is when does it start cutting rates?
The markets are going to be looking at when are they going to be cutting. They've already been pricing in, the bond market has been pricing in second half of this year, definitely fourth quarter. The bond market may be a little overzealous in that respect, but I do think definitely by the first quarter of next year, as of today, the Fed will be cutting based on what they've said and based on where we will be.
But first, one major uncertainty will need to be resolved: the raising of the country's debt ceiling. Without congressional action in the coming weeks, the U.S. could default, thrusting the economy and Fed policymakers into the middle of a crisis with little precedent.
In market data for oil prices extended losses after plunging 5% in the previous session as investors fretted about the health of the U.S. economy ahead of an expected Federal Reserve interest rate hike later in the day. Brent futures fell $1.99 to $73.33 a barrel, while West Texas Intermediate crude fell $2.03 to $69.63. And that was the business report on PBCJ. I'm Danita Rodney.
In regional news, in Grenada, a local attorney has added his voice to ongoing debates surrounding statements made by two popular and influential regional leaders at the recently held CARICOM Symposium on Crime.
Sometimes you get the impression that some magistrates, depending on who is the lawyer, their people seem to get a better treatment, their clients. Everybody talks about this, but they talk about it behind closed doors. There is, in aspects of our judiciary, a creeping lack of awareness as to some of the problems which we face. How can you go and give up somebody who is charged for murder bail? Let's be serious. How can you do that? I saw in the numbers from the Bahamas. Where those judges live? On Mars?
That was Prime Minister of neighboring St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Ralph Gonsalves, who has become the subject of widespread criticism, along with Barbadian Prime Minister Mia Mottley, following statements made about the judiciary during round-table consultations on April 17th. Criminal defense attorney Jerry Edwin took issue with the Vincentian leader's statements, describing it as unfortunate and calling for a retraction.
As a prime minister who is an attorney himself, Mr. Gonsalves does know, must know, that such remarks does not assist the judiciary. It undermines our judges and our courts, and it is unfortunate, and he must retract these statements as soon as possible, because there has been a groundswell of opposition from the bars in the region with respect to his unfortunate remarks.
Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley's contribution to the discussion is said to have added more fuel to the fire.
Then the jurisprudential developments that have effectively led to people getting bail for murder. In circumstances, when I practiced law, nobody got bail for murder. I was practicing criminal law up until 30 years ago. Nobody, I look young, but I still have a little age on me. People did not get bail for murder. Now, when I look at the stats, not just out of Bahamas, but in Barbados and all through the region, the people who are causing the greatest problems are charged with 2, 3, and 4 murders. Something is fundamentally wrong.
Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley is pressing for action and not solely promises, as she wants international institutions to place money where it is needed in helping small island developing states fix the climate crisis.
We need just over $2 trillion a year. But we can do this if we deconstruct and reconstruct. Part of the money will come from private savings when we can reduce the excessive risk premium that financial markets charge, particularly for countries from the global south. These risk premia prove to be overpayments that ultimately fatten the coffers of financiers and indeed enhance their profits tremendously. We need a joint partnership between the IMF and the World Bank that will allow us to guarantee long-run exchange rates without the excess risk premium to drive private savings into financing the green transformation. If this is what needs to be done to attract the private savings, let us do it and deconstruct the risk. Where there is not only a lowering and a leveling of the debt, as I spoke to just now, but also access to technology and equipment critical to the production of supplies that we are not receiving in order to make our commitments real. Failure, therefore, my friends, to do so will further erode what little trust remains there in the global south. We all know that the global stocktake will lead us and must lead us to a course correction.
A United Nations committee recently called on all countries in the Americas, including the Bahamas, to suspend deportations to Haiti. But Bahamas immigration minister says that is not going to happen. Jamila Missick has the story.
Repatriations will not cease, says Immigration Minister Keith Bell. That's despite the United Nations Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination's calls to facilitate the granting of protection measures, regularization, and granting legal stay to Haitian migrants. On Friday, the committee expressed concern over the treatment of Haitian migrants, saying there were concerning reports of human rights violations and abuses against Haitian migrants in the Americas.
Our small nation cannot possibly shoulder any more of a burden. We are standing strong on this position. Despite pressure earlier this year, when the United Nations called for countries in our region to halt deportations to Haiti, once again, I decided to continue repatriations.
Prime Minister Philip Davis previously said the Bahamas simply cannot afford to open its borders.
The infrastructure of the Bahamas, including the educational and the medical system, cannot support uncontrolled numbers of persons entering our country. The government has issued the department a clear and unequivocal mandate that the immigration laws must be enforced, and persons are not permitted to enter or remain in the Bahamas without the requisite approvals. Persons entering or remaining in the Bahamas outside immigration regulations will therefore be apprehended and deported immediately.
Last year, the Bahamas repatriated 4,748 irregular migrants. 3,349 of them were Haitian nationals. Up until March of this year, Bell says 2,030 persons have been repatriated at a cost of more than $1 million.
It is the long-held position of the government of the Bahamas that the international community must assemble the resources needed to provide Haiti with an economic package of debt forgiveness and aid to assist in improving its economic outlook. Fundamentally, the stabilization of Haiti will only happen if Haitians remain in their country and work to find a solution.
In international news, U.S. President Joe Biden's administration is sending an additional 1,500 soldiers to the border with Mexico to deal with increasing numbers of migrants and refugees trying to enter the United States. More from Al Jazeera.
Another 1,500 U.S. soldiers and Marines will be arriving on the southern border as soon as next week to join the 2,500 National Guard troops that are already there. The reason? It goes back to COVID. Former President Donald Trump made no secret of his disdain for migrants. He used the COVID emergency to enact a plan to turn back migrants to Mexico before they could ask for asylum, called Title 42, which President Joe Biden kept in place. But on May 11th, the COVID emergency is officially over, and authorities expect as many as 11,000 people will try to cross the border without documents each week. But Biden has changed the rules of what will happen when they get here. Now, anyone caught crossing without permission will be presumed to not qualify for asylum, making it easier to send them back immediately, unless they can prove they were denied asylum in another country. Immigration advocates are outraged at Biden's record.
So he's been very effective at taking away access to asylum, at limiting access to asylum, and so in my view, not great in protecting the rights of migrants and asylum seekers and honoring their humanity.
The Biden administration says it is allowing access for people to claim asylum if they make a very hard-to-get appointment at the border crossings. It has also changed the rules so that 30,000 migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela can come to the U.S. every month if they apply and have a local sponsor. The military is downplaying the significance of the move.
Military personnel will not directly participate in law enforcement activities. While this request is for 90 days, I would point out that DoD has supported DHS on the southwest border for 18 of the last 22 years and every year since 2006.
A long-standing issue that has divided the nation and has seen presidents from both parties promising to stop the flow of people, so far to little effect. Patty Culhane, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Al Jazeera has journalists and crews covering stories all over the world. Here's a quick look at what press freedom means to their team.
Press freedom is a fundamental right. Without the ability to freely report on events and issues of public interest, the public is left in the dark and unable to make informed decisions.
As a person who spent 438 days in jail just for doing my job and just for reporting the truth, I think and I believe that press freedom is a basic right for every single person.
There are many sides to one same story. There are many untold stories across the world. Freedom of press is being able to report them, listening to as many voices as possible, which otherwise would be unheard.
Press freedom to me is a double-edged sword. It's the space to practice my journalism without interference or pressure or fear of reprisals for what I do. But it comes with a major responsibility to get it right.
It's an important day for all of us. Without press freedom, general public may be subject to biased, incomplete, or even unverified information. It's a privilege we don't take for granted. Many of our colleagues even risk their life in pursuit of the truth.
I believe that serious journalism is more necessary than ever. Impartial eyes on the ground to shed light on the issues that affect people and communities around the world.
Freedom of the press means unbiased, fearless, and factual reporting from the ground. But a growing number of autocratic regimes, superpower rivalries, and the rise of ultra-nationalism are proving to be a big challenge.
Press freedom is the ability of journalists to go on about their work, to get the truth across and to give voice to the people without getting killed for the mere fact of being a journalist, the same way Shireen Abu Akleh was killed almost a year ago.
In sports, Cricket West Indies has announced the full schedule for the West Indies men's 2023 International Home Series against England. CWI in a statement says the world champions will visit the Caribbean in December and play a 3-match CG United one-day international series and 5 T20 international series. England is down to start the tour with 2 CG United ODIs at the Sir Vivian Richards Stadium in Antigua on December 3 and 6. The third CG United ODI will be played at Kensington Oval in Barbados on December 9, followed on December 12 by the first of 5 T20 internationals. The statement furthers that Grenada is set to welcome both teams for 2 T20 internationals on December 14 and 16. The tour concludes in the week before Christmas with the 4th and 5th T20 internationals at the Brian Lara Cricket Academy in Trinidad, which will be hosting a West Indies versus England men's fixture for the first time on December 19 and 20. Official West Indies tour operators and ticket information for the series will be announced in the coming weeks. Fans can register or sign up to receive the first news of tickets going on sale at www.windiescricket.com/updates. Jamaica's top gunners came out on top of their Caribbean rivals in last Saturday's Spectrum Handgun Championship in all 4 divisions that they competed. Ryan Bramwell topped the Open Division, Andrew Yap took the Standard Division, Chris Hart won the Production Optics Division, and Yoni Campbell captured the Production Division. Yoni Campbell copped the Production Division and topped the Ladies category. The Production Optics Division went to Chris Hart ahead of Adrian Randall and Michael Bradshaw, who took 3rd place. One overseas-based shooter got on the podium with Richard Durant of Barbados getting 2nd place in the senior category of the Standard Division behind Ellsworth Dixon, while Thomas Jones was 3rd. And that's the news on PBCJ. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. You can follow us on our social media platforms at PBCJamaica. Thank you so much for watching.